One time.
What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're playing a new format. We're playing a live game, a live home game. It's gonna be two forts. The stakes are gonna be much higher. There's gonna be a lot more interesting action, a lot bigger pots. And yeah, some of the players are very loose, so it makes for a very good game. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, especially subscribing at this early stage of my YouTube career. And yeah, hope you enjoy.
Here it is, the first hand of the poker vlog, an iconic moment. In the first hand, we pick up 9-10 of diamonds in the big blind. We're playing four-handed at the moment, so there's a lot of room to make some exploitative plays. The button limps, the small blind limps, and I decide to raise it up in the big blind to $16. Both players make the call. Off to a flop, which comes 9-3-8 rainbow. The board smashes my opponent's ranges, and all in all is quite poor from my range. However, for my actual hand, I've hit top pair and it's quite a reasonably good flop. For that reason, when the small blind checks, I decide to bet $25, roughly half pot, perhaps inducing a light call from my opponents, as they'll know the board hits their ranges more than mine. The button makes the call. He's quite a sticky player, likes to throw in a lot of bluffs, and has the tendency to play some confusing and unorthodox lines, which sometimes works out to his advantage. With that being said, the small blind makes the fold, and it's heads up to a turn. It comes the jack of diamonds, giving us the open-ended straight flush draw. This is what I like to call TMOS, or too many outs syndrome if we're behind. There's no real need to bluff with our combo draw. We probably already have the best hand. Yes, he could have many holdings that beat us, including 2 pairs, higher 9 pairs, or even a jack pair. However, he also could have floated the flop with many worse holdings. A turn bet will only achieve worse to fold, and better to call, most likely, so going for 3 streets of value isn't really an option here. For that reason I check, with the intention to call a bet of any reasonable sizing. It doesn't come to that though. He checks back, leading me to believe he's pretty showdown orientated. The river comes the deuce of clubs, a total break, and we're sitting with a 9 pair. Now, in a normal game you may find me crazy for betting this. However, as I said, my opponent could genuinely call here with a 3 pair or a deuce pair, even ace high potentially. So I decide to bet for value, betting $45 into a pot of 98, targeting these holdings mentioned. Well, now something really weird happens. He decides to min click it to $100. Our direct odds are close to 4 to 1, meaning we have to win this hand roughly 20% of the time for it to be profitable. In a high level game, this play would be uncommon, but if it did happen, it's almost never a bluff. It's pretty much value orientated with 100% frequency, because the bluffer is giving such good odds to call. Therefore, many people would actually fold in this situation because it's just never a bluff. However, this player specifically has been known to min raise bluff in the past very often, and his line just makes no sense at all. What line calls flop, checks back turn and min raises river? Maybe a set or 10 queen to make the straight? It just doesn't really add up, so for that reason for me, this is a slam dunk call situation, as well as this player's bluffing tendencies. I do snap call after his bet, and we're good. He flips over king 7 for king high, so yeah, we take this one down with our 9 pair. On to the next one, we pick up ace 8 offsuit in the small blind. The same player from last hand raises it up to 15 under the gun, and only we make the call. The flop comes ace 7-9 with 2 clubs. An ace high board almost always favors the pre-flop aggressor, so he should be betting this board texture at a very high frequency. Having top pair with a decent kicker four-handed, I check, hoping for our opponent to make a bet. He obliges with a small sizing of $15. I think about check raising, but it's probably a dumb move here, so we just make the call. The turn comes the ace of diamonds, a magical card. It's very unlikely we're beat now, and we may even get some more value from smaller pairs, as in their minds, it's less likely for us to have an ace now. I check once again, and now our opponent checks back. The river comes the 9 of clubs, completing the flush, but also giving us a full house. Now, we're just never beat if he had a hand like ace king, ace queen, ace jack. We've just rivered him, and only pocket 9s beat us. So we need to get some money in this pot. We bet pot size of $65, targeting a 9 or a pocket pair such as kings, queens, etc. that may be able to call this large bet. Now our opponent tanks for a bit, before once again, yeah, you guessed it, he min raises it to 130. It's almost identical action to the previous hand, however this time we actually have it. There's nothing to do other than shove it in. He has roughly 100 behind. But he snap calls, I show my ace, and he begrudgingly flips over ace king. What a suck out on the river. Saved us a lot of chips as we had such a strong hand. I'm not actually involved in this next hand, but it's quite funny. Our nemesis so far in the small blind straddles for 8. The big blind calls, I fold because I can predict the future. The button calls, and our min raising opponent blind shoves for $59.
I haven't seen my hand yet. I'm all in.
And this is where it gets interesting. The big blind shows me his cards discreetly. He has none other than pocket rockets. Pocket aces, the best hand you can have in poker. And he decides to Hollywood for a couple minutes before just making the call, and everyone else folds. The big blind's looking pretty happy with himself, sure he's going to win, and the other player still hasn't seen his cards, so the flop comes king 10-3, 5, 8, and he flips over, 5, and a 3, and he's sucked out! What a suck out, what a hand! And that, ladies and gentlemen, that is how you crack aces. I know this channel could be informative, but that, my friends, is the best way to go to crack aces. And here's the face of a defeated man. A defeated man taken to his knees by a premium 5-3 offsuit against aces. Finally, a good hand. We pick up one of the best hands of the game, king 3 offsuit. We get 2 limpers to us, and in this scenario we decide to trap with such a strong holding, checking back in the big blind. The flop comes 7-6-5 monotone, all spades. This board hits our range pretty nicely, as we should have many 5s, 6s and 7s in our range, considering we checked back in the big blind. We also have the second nut flush draw, which is quite a bit stronger than usual, as it's less likely the small blind and the button player have an ace, specifically the ace of spades, considering they didn't raise four-handed. Meaning if we did hit our 4th spade, we're very likely to be good. Action begins by the small blind donk leading for $10. Although I think a raise could be good here at some frequency, I just make the call and so does the button. Off to a turn 3 ways, which comes the 4 of diamonds. This is a very interesting card as we've now hit our gut shot, but we do have the lower end of a 4-liner on the board. 8s are very much in our opponent's ranges, but our hand is still quite strong. Action ensues by the small blind leading again once for $20. At this point, I think a raise is pointless, as only better or maybe the same will call, so I just make the call. However, now the button raises it up to $66. Quite a small sizing. I'm not quite sure what to make of this bet. The small blind makes the call, and getting such a good price, even though I'm beat a large percentage of the time, I kind of have to call, especially with my flush draw. Multi-way to a river, which now comes the jack of diamonds. A complete blank on this board texture and doesn't really change anything. Our flush draw breaks out, however, but we still have the lower end of a straight. Our aim is to get to showdown cheaply, so when the small blind checks, I just make the check too. The button, who's the player who's been min-raising me every hand, now bets $14 into a pot of $240. It's just such a weird bet sizing, but it's one of the best odds I've ever received in my poker career, getting almost 20-1. The small blind makes the call, we obviously call too, but the button flips over pocket 8s for the higher straight. We lose this one, but yeah, I'm a bit confused as how he's played that one. Unfortunately, we don't take this one down. Downgrading in hand strength, we pick up ace-9 offsuit under the gun. One thing to note is the table's filled up, and we're now playing 6-handed, something I'm a bit more comfortable in. I limp under the gun. I really don't know why, I don't recommend this, but I do it. The hijack limps, and one of the new players in the cutoff min raises it to $8. The button makes the call, the small blind makes the call, and the big blind makes the call. So when action is on me, I'm not trying to see a flop 6 ways, no. My hand strength should be better than everyone's at the table, apart from maybe the cutoff player. Additionally, limping under the gun only to 3-bet and open looks extremely strong and should give me a lot of respect. For these reasons, I make a low frequency play and exploitatively limp 3-bet to $45. As expected, everyone else folds apart from the cutoff player, so I'll have to be wary even if I hit an ace out here. Heads up to the flop, which comes ace 4-5 rainbow. This could either be a really good flop for me or really bad. On an ace high flop though, I'll be c-betting most of my range considering I 3-bet pre-flop, so I decide to lead out for $40. He makes the call. The turn comes a dream card, the 9 of spades. We now have aces up, but I don't really have any idea how this player plays and don't want to scare him off, so I decide to check hoping he bets. Unfortunately he checks back and we're off to a river. The 6 of clubs is flipped over as the river. 7-8 gets there, although we shouldn't really be too worried about this holding. I bet for value, betting $85 into a pot of $190. He quickly makes the fold, but tables queen 4 of diamonds, so even if we did bet the turn, he probably wasn't calling. This one's a big one, ladies and gentlemen. We're playing a double board bomb pot, so basically everyone puts in $10 pre-flop. We skip the pre-flop betting stage, and 2 sets of the 5 community cards are dealt in the middle, with the same stages as normal no limit hold'em. Our hand is queen 9 offsuit, not terrible. It doesn't really matter what you have at the start, it's more about how you connect with both flops. The first flop comes queen queen 10 2 clubs. The second flop comes deuce 9 5 monotone, all diamonds. This is just absolutely perfect. I remember someone at the time saying, the best card to have is the queen of diamonds, let alone what we actually have, the queen of diamonds with top pair on the other board and a draw to the flush. The way these double board bomb pots work is if you win both boards at Showdown, you take all the money in the pot. If you win one board and someone else wins another board, you split the money 50-50. With that being said, unfortunately I'm in the small blind, so I elect to check. However, I'm pretty sure someone else will bet. This does happen. Under the Gun bets $10, to which the hijack calls. The cutoff now 3 bets it up to $60, to which at this point I'm loving life, but what makes it even better is that the button 4 bet shoves for $131. My thought process at this stage is that no one can compete with my hand head to head on both boards, but it's very possible one of them has a hand such as Ace Queen, that beats me on one, and another person has a flush on the top board, or double pair, which beats me on that one, so I'd actually win none of the money. Therefore I need to get as much of my money in the pot as possible to build some significant side pots, so even if the button has me beat, I'll guarantee win some of the side pot with another player. I don't want them to fold though, so I 5 bet extremely small to $200. It gets even weirder now when the big blind cold calls this bet, leaving him with around $100 behind. The hijack snap calls with only 50 behind, now the cutoff tanks for ages, as this bet will pull him all in. This is a good sign, because if he did have me beat on one board, with the exception of maybe a 2 pair on the monotone diamond board, he would have just snap called. He ends up making the fold, meaning I'm heads up to the turn to build a side pot. The turns come the 2 of hearts on board 1, and the 3 of spades on board 2. These are pretty safe cards all in all, unless someone now has a boat which can beat my flush if I hit a diamond on the river of board 1. However, this is just a small detail. There's nothing other to do than to rip it in for around $100 into a pot of $700 against the big blind. He snap calls and we're off to a run out. The big blind tables a flush on board 1, the button who shoved for $131 shows a flush draw on board 2, and the hijack who shoved for $50 total shows the ace of diamonds for a flush draw on the first board. We're actually in better shape than expected. We just need a faded club on board 2, we're ahead heavily on that board, and hitting a diamond or a 9 on board 1 will cause us to win both boards, apart from the $250 total that will go to the hijack, who will have a better flush with his ace of diamonds on board 1. The river comes, the 6 of spades on board 2, we fade the club, and the 7 of clubs on board 1. We scoop half the total pot with trips, and the other half going to the big blind with the flush. All in all, a good result, taking down around $450. Moving on to the penultimate hand of the video, we pick up Jack 9 offsuit, 5-handed in the cutoff. Under the gun opens to $15. I make a really loose call, the button makes the call, and so does the big blind. 4 ways to a flop, which comes deuce, 9, jack, rainbow. Action checks to me, and I bet $15. Really small, considering it's a very dry board texture. However, looking back, this is just way too small, 4 ways, and I really needed to bump it up to over half pot at least. Anyways, under the gun makes the call, and everyone else folds. The turn is the deuce of spades. We both don't really have any deuces in our range. Maybe we can have something like ace 2 suited, but that's about it. So when he checks to me, I can definitely continue barreling. Once again, I bet really small, too small in my opinion, to $35. He makes the call, and we're off to a river. It comes the king of spades. 10 queen gets there, which is a viable hand for him to have. When I get checked to, I still think I can bet for value. Our opponent has a tendency to overcall, so I think he will call the king, pair, any jack pair, or worse 2 pairs than ours, as well as hands that beat us obviously. I bet small once again, $65 into a pot of 162. I don't think a bet of this size is a mistake on this street, however, as I'm targeting 1 pair of holdings which would unlikely call a much larger bet. He now tells me that he has pocket 10s and flips them over. Now I'm thinking to myself, how can I get him to call? It's quite a friendly table, there's a lot of table talk, and I decide to try my luck in showing him one of my cards. I'd never recommend to do this normally, but I flip over my 9, hoping to entice him to call, as now I either have a really strong hand or he has me beat. After a minute of tanking, my play pays off, he sticks in calling chips, and we grab this pot. And now we're on to the final hand of the video. We pick up ace 5 of hearts, 4-handed in the big blind. The button straddles for $10, the small blind makes the call. I probably really should be raising here, but I'd throw in a flat, and the button now makes it $30. Only I make the call. The flop comes 5, 4, 9, 2 diamonds. Although in theory this board should hit our range much more than the button, from past experiences with this player, he can have an extremely wide range, so in my head I give him an uncapped range both ways. I'm out of position, but feel this is an appropriate board texture to donk lead to protect my middle pair. I bet 25. The button decides that's not good enough for him, he raises it up to $50. The price I'm getting is just too good, but what's he really trying to represent here? A double pair? Maybe a flush draw? This player tries to min-raise bluff a lot, he's the same player we've been battling with the whole day. If he thinks his opponent has nothing, he tries to min-raise bluff, so even though I have a hand with minimal hand strength, I feel we could be good in this spot. I make the call, planning to call down to the river if no diamonds appear. The turn comes the 4 of spades. In theory you may think this is a great card, it limits the amount of 2-pair combinations as well as a pair of 4s and sets, but just from my knowledge of this opponent, the check raises he can incorporate into his strategy involve a lot of small pairs which may have turned trips now. I stick with my plan however, checking to our opponent who bet $65. He's repping quite a strong holding, but the bet's pretty small and I'm just not believing him, so I stick to my plan and make the call. The river comes the ace of clubs, no diamond which is good, and it gives us a stronger 2-pair. In reality, it doesn't really change much unless he has a 9 or some hand like 9-5, but we're much more likely to call a large bet now. We decide to check, letting him bluff at it, as if our read was right on the flop and the turn. If we bet ourselves, he's probably just gonna fold. He checks back pretty quickly, we show our cards, and we're good.
Short hand, don't care.
Queen 5 is flipped over, he's not too happy about it, but we were right all the way along and we scoop this pot. Shortly after, our session ends and we end up having a good winning session.
Hope you guys enjoyed today. We got into a lot of interesting spots, especially that double board bomb pot for $900. But yeah, we were in for $300, out for $677, meaning we made a profit of $377 over 6 hours of play actually, which is quite a long time for me. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, especially subscribing because it will really help the channel out at this early stage. And yeah, peace.